What's up, everybody? We're back. We're live with another episode of the Compassionate Viking podcast. I am your host, Tyler Stanaway, and today's episode is one of my favorite episodes that I've done so far. I got to sit down with my shaman who has been my, I call him like the tour guide for my journeys on my ayahuasca ceremony. And so I finally got to meet up with him. He's a busy man. He lives in California. And I got to catch up with him right before he was heading back after he had just facilitated a ceremony over the weekend. And it was just a real pleasure. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And I want to say I can't wait to get back and do a ceremony. However, it's frightening at the same time. It's about one of the only things I can think of that actually kind of puts fear in my fucking heart, which is crazy considering all the things that I have done and do. But man, spiritual jujitsu is what I call it, and it's a real doozy. So, being that my podcast was really about ayahuasca and ceremonies and the perspective of a facilitator or shaman or minister himself, I figured the herb of the week this week would be ayahuasca. So ayahuasca, I'm just going to go off Wikipedia, even though I don't know how accurate it is, but usually they don't really lie about this kind of shit. It says, ayahuasca is a South American psychoactive and entheogenic brewed drink traditionally used both socially and as a ceremonial or shamanic spiritual medicine among the indigenous peoples of the Amazon basin, and more recently in Western society. The tea causes altered states of consciousness, often known as a psychedelic experience, which include visual hallucinations and altered perceptions of reality. Ayahuasca is commonly made from I think it's called the vine of the soul, which it's a Latin name and I don't know how to say it. So it's the ayahuasca vine. And then the other shrub, which is called chacruna, and it says, or a substitute and other ingredients, including all these other fucking plants that I don't know what they are. A chemically similar preparation, sometimes called pharmahuasca, can be prepared using N,N-dimethyltryptamine or DMT and a pharmaceutical monoamine oxidase inhibitor, or MAOI, such as a moclamiide, or I don't even know these terms, guys. It says internationally, the Convention of Psychotropic Substances lists the ingredient DMT as a Schedule I drug, but does not control the cultivation of plants from which it can be derived, similarly to the legal gray area position of psychedelic plants like peyote or other mescaline-containing cacti. Ayahuasca is known by many names throughout the northern South America basin. In Brazil, ayahuasca is the traditional spelling of the word. It says, in Brazil, the brew and the lana are informally called either cape or quipo, the letters for Portuguese for wood climbing vine. History. Evidence of ayahuasca use dates back at least 1,000 years, as demonstrated by a bundle containing the residue of ayahuasca ingredients and various other preserved shamanic substances in a cave in southwestern Bolivia discovered in 2010. In the 16th century, Christian missionaries from Spain first encountered indigenous western Amazonian basin South Americans using ayahuasca. Their earliest reports described it as the work of the devil. In 1905, the active chemical constituent of B-cape was named telepathine, but in 1927 it was found to be identical to a chemical already isolated from the Paganum harmea, and it was given the name harmine. Beat writer William S. Burroughs read a paper by Richard Evans Schultz on the subject, and while traveling through South America in the early 1950s, sought out ayahuasca in the hopes that it could relieve or cure opiate addiction. Ayahuasca became more widely known when the McKenna brothers published their experience in the Amazon, The True Hallucinations. Dennis McKenna later studied pharmacology, botany, and chemistry of ayahuasca, in which he became the subject of his master thesis. So, Ayahuasca, the tea that I drink, is you can't just have the vine. You have to have the chacruna leaves with it. So if I understand it right, let's see here. I don't know what one contains the DMT. One of them contains the DMT, and the other one contains it contains the, what is it, molecule or the whatever's inside of it that makes it to where the DMT can pass through your blood-brain barrier. Because our bodies already produce DMT, and I think like all foods and plants actually have DMT in it, but we're not affected by it unless we're sleeping in REM sleep, or because that's where we're producing it ourselves. And I think there's other ways you can do it too, through breath work and meditation and Reiki energy, and there's many other ways. So our body makes it, but if you were to take it, you can't just eat it because your body will not allow it to go through the blood-brain barrier. So I think it just eats it up too fast or something. So you have to have, I think, the leaves. But don't quote me. It could be the vine. Either way, you have to have the ayahuasca vine, and you have to have the leaves. And I don't know how they brew it, but they fucking brew it, and they make a tea. And fuck, it's crazy. But it was also one of the most life-changing, beneficial things I've ever done in my life. To the point where I went like once a month for a couple months. And then I haven't been since, I believe it was like September. Yeah, I think September, maybe October. No, September. And I'm feeling like I could go back, but I definitely needed some time off to integrate all of the information that I had acquired. It was insane. So the reason why I think that this is so profound is because I'm someone who had a lot of trauma. I mean, not as much as some people, but more than normal, or more than what should be allowed. And I had tried many different ways to heal myself. I have been to rehabilitation centers. I have talked to counselors. I have talked to therapists, psychiatrists. I've been to, I've listened to podcasts. I've signed up for like different men's groups. I've read books. I've pretty much done every single thing that I could possibly think of to heal myself. And although a lot of them did work in many ways, I always just still had this problem that I didn't even really know what it was or how it affected me until I actually went and did an ayahuasca ceremony. So I was hesitant for a while. I was worried about, I don't know, black magic or demons attaching themselves to me or coming back worse than I originally started. I just had all these fears and these excuses, really, of why I shouldn't do it. And finally, I was like, look, many, many, many people have taken this for thousands and thousands of years away from Western culture. It's completely natural. It's Mother Nature put those plants here. And if there truly is spirits in the plants, and it allows you to connect to higher consciousness, or whatever they call Mother Aya, and it is beneficial, then what do you have to lose? And I was at the point where I had gone through every option, and I felt like, okay. And I was interested in it too. I had taken mushrooms before. I've done many things growing up, and so I'm not like a stranger. However, I'm an adult and I have like kids and a wife, and I'm not doing those things. But I didn't look at it as like a recreational thing. I was doing it solely to better myself. As Andy Frisella says, to pursue personal excellence. And whether that's your way or the right way or the wrong way, I don't know who's to say that. However, I did it, and it was, I shouldn't say the experience was fantastic, but what I gained from it was well worth it. The juice was absolutely worth the squeeze. So, for anyone who wants to know what it was like, for me, it was like going to some type of therapy or counselor of soul searching for like 100 years. That's the only thing I can think of, is like it would have took me 100 years to figure out what the problem was. And I was shown instantly. I was shown, for one, my third chakra was closed, which I didn't know. And I didn't know that my heart was closed off. And that was a very eye-opening experience. And I also didn't realize how my actions and my words and my behaviors imprint on others. And I realized that they absolutely do in every way, shape, or form. And so therefore, because I was shown that I was the sword, and I'll get into that a little bit more in the podcast, or you can go to Endless Endeavor podcast and look me up. I did ayahuasca 1 and ayahuasca 2. I have no idea what episodes they are, but that's on the Endless Endeavor podcast with Greg Anderson. And then on my podcast, I've talked about it a little bit. But long story short, I was shown that I was a sword with no sheath, and I was cutting people. And cutting people that I loved and didn't mean to, and strangers who were just walking by and admiring me. And I know that probably seems absolutely ludicrous to people who are listening, but in the moment when I was having this vision, it made absolutely perfect sense, and I started bawling. I started crying because I realized that I had hurt so many people without me actually intentionally doing it. And it's one thing for me to set out to fucking hurt somebody. It's completely different to accidentally hurt people who don't deserve to be hurt all the time. And it's like, I just can't figure out how a human could have relayed this to me, because if I truly believe that at that point in time, if you would have sat me down and someone said this to me, I probably would have just told them to go fuck themselves. And I'm serious. I would have said, go fuck yourself. You have no idea who I am. You don't know what I fucking stand for. You don't know anything about me. So, and there's no problem. I know how to love. I have a wife. I know how to love. I have kids. I have friends. I have passions. I have goals. I have dreams. I know what love is. And it's like, there's just no fucking way for me to ever know what I know now had I not drinking the tea. So I am forever grateful for the plants that Mother Nature has given us. I am forever grateful for the knowledge that I've acquired after deciding that I was going to have a relationship with these plants. And the knowledge continues to pour in all the time. A lot of people ask me how I know so much, or how I seem so wise for being as young as I am. And I don't have the answer for that. I'm like, dude, literally, I mean, it was before the plant ceremony that this was a thing. But really, in the last year, man, the information that just comes to me, it's like, I don't fucking know where this came from, but it's legit. And I'm Hey guys, before we start the podcast, I want to give a huge shout out to NFS Company out in Colorado Springs. They had their fucking grand opening, and now you can go in the store and check out all of their cool shit. Remember, they got firearms, they got ammo, they got optics, tactical gear, suppressors, you name it, they have it. Not only that, they can find the rare shit. For instance, I got my Glock 19 FDE from them, and it's kind of hard to come by. They found it, had it to me in 2 days. That's amazing. I'm all the way up in Washington, and they're in Colorado, so you can't fucking beat that. On top of that, anyone looking for preparedness for firearms training, they got a private range out there with a badass 10th Group Special Forces instructor. I don't know if you guys know, but finding people with that expertise is kind of hard to come by these days. So get on top of that. Go to www.nfsshootingsupply.com, or you can find them on Instagram at nofuckingslack.co. On their Instagram is where you can find their schedule. If you're interested in anything, make sure that you support American-made shit, guys. This is how we're going to change the world. No fucking slack. What's up, guys? We're live, and I am here with my shaman. Is that what I'd call you, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. That's okay. That works.
Okay. So I finally got to have a podcast with him and sit down, and we're here at the retreat, and he just got doing his thing, and I wanted to catch him before he headed back to California.
Yeah.
So
Here for a limited time.
it's really awesome, and I think we should just start off with who are you, where you grew up, and
Sure.
we'll get to this point right now.
The story, the history.
Yeah, the
of me.
history.
So, well, my name's Kevin, and I am, how old am I now? Like 55, I guess.
Okay.
So I grew up in Southern Oregon, graduated high school back in the mid-'80s. Pretty much an all-American upbringing, living in, small town America.
Yeah.
And, for those younger members of your audience, that was right at the height of the Cold War, right? So it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that we were going to be fighting the Soviets at some point. And so, it just seemed like a lot of, kind of American patriotism, spirit, that kind of thing. So I went right from high school into West Point.
Okay.
And so I was there for 4 years, graduated, was commissioned lieutenant, went into the Army, and I was in the Army for, about 5 years before I got out. And during that time, I did a lot of fun stuff, that young men want to do.
Yeah.
Now, I came in at a time right between. I missed both the Gulf Wars, which at the time I was, thought was a big loss. But looking back on it, I'm super glad that I didn't have to go through that.
Yeah, no shit.
So I came in between Gulf 1 and Gulf 2, did the typical Army thing. I was an armor officer. I Ranger qualified, went to Ranger school, went to airborne school, air assault school, that stuff. And so I had a really good, experience and was part of the 82nd Airborne for a number of years. So then I got out, I realized I didn't know why, but I just wasn't being called to continue in that particular line of work for a variety of reasons. And one of the main ones being like the Cold War ended, so no one really knew what to do. So it was a weird time in America, like your major enemy just disappeared. And so now, how do you, and you've really been kind of organizing your society to take that on. So really from the late 90s when the whole thing collapsed until kind of mid 90s, there was a little bit of, I think wandering around from the military until, Gulf 2 kicked off.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I left that. I went to business school, got my MBA, went to Wharton, which was one of the top business schools, it still is. And from there, went right into corporate America and then was there for, moved out to Silicon Valley, caught the internet startup, revolution. This would have been circa kind of late 90s.
Okay.
And then just really pursued a career in internet startups for, 20 years basically. Had some ups and downs, minor successes, nothing major. And then I found myself living down in Silicon Valley, and it was probably early, when would this have been? Maybe 2007, 2008 probably. And I was just really, I had a couple of business failures. I was just tired of it all, and I just could not, whatever money I had, I'd spent on other startup stuff. And I was just like soul weary is the way I describe it. And so, this would have been, late 2010s, 2008, something like that. Anyway, so floundering around for a while. Then I decided, that I was super depressed and super anxious, and I just could not pull myself out of this anxiety and this depression that I was in.
Were you drinking or taking pills or anything like that?
No pills, certainly drinking.
Yeah.
But more just, it was kind of like a functioning depressant. I was just like trying to get the energy going, drinking like 20 cups of coffee a day kind of thing. I guess caffeine and kind of stimulants were more of my thing back in the day. But the realization was I had to do something. I just was not feeling good.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit before we signed on, of just there's this epidemic of people you just don't feel good.
Yeah.
And how do you define that? Do you need to be exuberant and happy all the time? No, that's not realistic. But you also know if you're just not feeling good. And if you're just not feeling good, it's really hard to get on top of the challenges that this life is going to throw at you.
Absolutely.
And I've come to realize that now more as an energetic and kind of a soul issue, more than anything else. And, I think that you experienced some of that. So I didn't really understand that's what was going on, and then I had some connections, kind of friends of friends of friends who had some experience, and they had some friends going down to a retreat center down in Peru.
Yep.
To do an ayahuasca retreat center down there. So I went down to an awesome retreat center called New Way Rao. I would recommend. They're still around doing great work. I recommend that to anybody out there. And I was there for a couple of weeks, and it just really blew my mind as to, it's like for the first time I realized, hey, there is something else going on here, not just a material world, and it's real and it's experiential.
Yeah.
And, at different times in these experiences, you get thrust into what I would call like ultra reality, which is much more refined and defined than this reality. And then, you kind of come back, you come down off of your journey and you're back, back in your body, back in this 3-dimensional reality. And then folks are like, yeah, but how do you know you weren't just hallucinating or, who's to say that reality is more than this reality? And I liken that to thinking about it like when you're dreaming, when you're asleep and dreaming, you don't know there's a higher reality, i.e. this reality we're in right now, until you wake up. Right?
Yep.
And you're like, oh, okay, I was dreaming. Things were foggy. It was confusing. Now I'm here in this reality. Physics works. Like I'm more awake. Things are clear. There's a kind of a linear kind of idea around time in this world, in this reality, that kind of thing. Well, the same thing, right? Once you take some hallucinogenics, you get into a place of ultra reality. Whether it's psilocybin or whether it's ayahuasca or whether it's it could be anyone of the cactus family. There you can get out there, and then you just wake up into a reality that's far more real than this reality.
Yeah.
And then when you come back down, you come back in, you realize, oh, that was more. I know that was more real than this, and this feels very sleepy and kind of very gross and very like, not gross like bad, just like very, it's like I liken it to that old game Sim City,
Mm-hmm.
Where you're, or you have these little people you're moving around and you feed them and they do stuff. But it's a simulation, right? It's a simple simulation of this reality we live in. And so, I think at least the way I'm thinking about it now, this is basically a simulation that we're in.
Yeah.
And it's a simplified version of that bigger reality.
Of whatever the big one is.
Yeah, yeah. And there are many ways of getting there. I think you can meditation, right?
Yeah.
I think certainly the Buddhists are onto something. Breath work. There are many kind of ethnogenic ways of getting to that space. But this is a pretty popular way of doing it because it's a kind of a sure thing,
Oh, fucking A.
You're gonna whether you want to or not, you're gonna head in the rabbit hole.
That's it. It's definitely, I've done breath work, which I've heard, due to the certain breath work and the breathing that you would release a little bit of DMT and, all these things, which sure. I've heard, I've done ice baths and cold plunges.
Yeah.
I've done meditation, which I'm terrible at. I end up just usually falling asleep or thinking about what I need to do. So I need to do better at meditation. Yeah. But so far for me personally, none of those they're not even like on the same plane as drinking that tea.
Yeah. No, for sure. And, and so I found myself kind of living this conventional life of what the world says is a success, getting to a place where I wasn't happy. I just didn't feel good. And for the first time, again, I was thinking about, I could see killing myself. Like I was so miserable. You're like, when you're feeling good, you're like, how could you ever think about doing that? But then when you're feeling really bad, you're just like, look, there's just not enough juice to squeeze anymore. I'm just beat, and I got no place to go. And you think about like, the horrible kind of rise in suicide rates, among, our military professional, especially folks coming back from war. And this is just that same fatigue. They're just not feeling good. And like I said, I've come to realize that is more of an energetic and a soul issue, not so much a biochemical issue. And so we're treating it the way we are through kind of the allopathic, medical community, antidepressants and anxiety medicine, all this kind of stuff. But that's just masking the symptoms to some degree, if it's even doing that, right?
Yeah.
It's not addressing the soul issue, So I kind of ran across this. I went into Peru, did this thing, and it was just clear to me that I was kind of thinking about things wrong, and I felt so much better after releasing all of this crap from my childhood, from past lives, and I didn't really believe any of this stuff going down there. I was pretty much kind of not quite atheist, agnostic, didn't really know. I was raised a conservative Christian, so I'd seen that whole thing, and realized that really stopped making any sense for me, kind of 15, 16, 17. And so I was just kind of really didn't have a spirituality. So I did the experience, and then I came back and was like, okay, there's something here for sure, and I really need to find out what's going on, with me. And I'm also a curious person, so you're just like, really, what the fuck is going on here? You're all of a sudden you realize, hey, I'm like a human being walking around, and you have an experience that gets you out of that. You get a new perspective. You're like, okay, I've had this amazing perspective, many experiences now. Like, what's really going on? What am I supposed to be doing here? I feel better now. I feel like I've just dumped 100 pounds of energy weight of trauma from childhood, all kinds of stuff, And I think I had a relatively reasonable childhood, but just, it's hard to get through any kind of childhood, just the trauma of being born. I've been shown this on many of my journeys of just coming in, right? You're on the other side, and it really is, it kind of reminds me of that, the old movie Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he kind of enters into, the Matrix or whatever, he comes back in time, he just kind of like, lands basically in like the middle of New York or something, and he's all steaming, and he's all greasy, just like, oh, what the fuck just happened? So I feel like that when you're on the other side, you come in and you just get injected into this matrix, and your soul, you become embodied as a fetus, right? And right when you become animated, it's a huge shock to your system, because you go from the other side where you have many more dimensions of knowledge, and then you get injected into this reality, and all of a sudden you're a little baby monkey, in a womb, and you're just like, you're in time and you're in space. And these are things that we all take for granted, this linear notion of time, and time and space are connected, right? We know that. And so we take this for granted, but oftentimes on the other side, or different realities, you just realize, well, this reality frame is very particular, and time is a very particular, facet of this reality frame, time and space. And so coming from the other side, where there's no time and space, into time and space, you just, it's a shock to the system. No matter what your plans are coming in. I do think that, we come in for all kinds of reasons. Main one being evolution of your consciousness. Something about being embodied as a human in this 3D reality is really good for the evolution of your soul. And something around, being in a linear timeline allows you to understand cause and effect more, right? You're also very localized, right? You're stuck into this human, this called like the monkey robot, and the monkey robot, it's had millions of years of evolution to get to where it is now, and it's very good at survival, and it runs itself pretty much. I mean, you got to stick food in it, but other than that, like, you don't control your breathing, you don't control your heart rate, you don't control the millions of metabolic processes that are going on to keep you alive. Heals itself, you get a cut, broke your leg, whatever. It's a pretty good robot. And I think a lot about that, of just how when the soul comes in, you got to get to know your robot, and that's the process of growing up. But nobody tells you that, right? Nobody positions it that way. You just, all you know is you're a human, and this is all that you are. Right? So having any of these experiences where you get out of yourself and you have a change of perspective, you just realize, hey, there's actually this eternal soul thing that I really am. And this is what all the spiritual traditions are getting at, right? You are the soul, you are the I am. And then, you are basically riding around in this monkey suit, this vehicle, and you're here to play the game, here to do something, here to have a good time. I think we're here for the experience. Like, I'm not sure if the soul cares so much, if, you're getting flogged, or if you're, having a great time. I think it's really here for the experience. But your soul is also here to learn stuff. And you think about that of like, well, what are you learning? Well, it's kind of leaning again on all the spiritual traditions. Everyone says the same thing, like, be more heart-centered, right? Do unto others, the golden rule, be kind, be helpful, right? And these are, the basis of all kind of good morality, human morality, but they're also it's really built into the system to get you, like, to feel good. You have to be more heart-centered. You have to be generating good feelings, to feel good as a person. And it's hard. It's hard to love in the face of pain or in the face of threat, because the monkey is so programmed to survive.
Yeah.
It really wants to survive at all cost. And it's really hard to maintain that kind of heart-centeredness, during that, when your monkey is in a fight or flight mode,
Yeah. So when you were in Peru and you drank ayahuasca for the first time, was it a certain tribe?
Yeah. So there's a couple of, you think about, ayahuasca use in, let's say, the States now, and it really comes from a couple of places. It comes from some of the indigenous tribes in the Amazon, the Shipibo and the Quechua, Mestizo, Yawanawa, a couple of tribes. And they have their traditions that run back thousands of years, arguably.
And they're different?
Yeah. They've all kind of evolved differently. They're all kind of upper Amazonian tribes where the ayahuasca vine is found. And who knows if it was discovered separately or the same? I don't know. It's been lost to time, but they all have their own traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a couple of Brazilian churches that actually made it up to America, kind of back in the 70s, I think, and 80s. You have the Santo Daime Church, which was a church out of Brazil, and it kind of combined Portuguese Catholicism with some of the medicine, like indigenous medicine rituals to create their own kind of a church. And there are Santo Daime churches around, the West Coast particularly, but they're all around America. Mm-hmm. And there's another Brazilian church called the UDV Church, which is very similar. It's a Brazilian church. I think it was formed in the 60s, whatever, in Brazil. And then there are different churches up here in America. So really, as it's practiced here, it's either coming, like the traditions and how to do it are coming up from either those indigenous tribes or else coming from those Brazilian churches who are here.
Okay. So then you did your ayahuasca and you came back?
Yeah, I came back and, I knew that I had this paradigm shifting. I just felt better.
Yeah.
I was like, great, this is a path to feeling better. But it's not easy, as you've experienced, right? Mm-hmm. Like changing your own energetic structure is, it can be very difficult work. And it takes a long time. It can. Like you just realize between your, your personality, your psychology, your, those codes, that programming runs very, very deep within you. And it's, you're being programmed from the time like I said, the time you animate your fetus, pre-birth, you're being conditioned and being programmed.
Yeah.
So it's unwinding some of those unhealthy programs, takes a while. So I, came back early 2010s, I guess. And then, was still doing the Silicon Valley entrepreneur thing, joined a couple more startups and just kind of did that whole thing, but just really was not that satisfied with what I was doing. I could just tell, I'm like, this is not really where I belong. But at the time, my ego was still driving towards making money, having that big payoff at some point. And so I was really kind of willing to sacrifice it all still for that. But it's just really, again, I could feel myself slipping back into that place of unhappiness. At the same time, I knew I wanted to continue to do the medicine work. And so I looked around. At that point in time, there weren't a lot of opportunities to do it in the States. So I was getting ready to go back to Peru, and I ran across the local medicine church that I then joined and was doing work with. And just, over the years, ended up percolating up, started to do some helping, some assisting, and then became a minister in the church, about 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, maybe more, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And again, this is a work I never intended on doing. And now I'm basically splitting my time. Half of my time is doing work for this, as a minister, basically, right, in the medicine church.
Yeah.
And I also have another tech startup I'm doing on the side around energy. We're in stealth mode, so I'm not going to talk that much about that. But, it took a lot to go from, decent Silicon Valley salary to, giving it all up and then kind of chasing these two, these two jobs, if you call them that, which aren't very remunerative right now. But at some point you got to take that leap, right? So, and you're, and this is, kind of mix things up a little bit. But as you do this work, what you begin to uncover is your soul, right? You begin to come back into your body. And this is what I would describe it to people, and I see it all the time now in the work, is that, most of us through trauma, this life, past life, whatever, you end up basically out of your body. Like your soul, pieces of your soul break off, and you're just really not here. Once you can clean out your energetic system, you can then kind of reoccupy your body, right? And then once you're back here, you are much more plugged into your soul coming through your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a lot to unpack there, but it's particularly difficult in our culture because as men, we're trained to basically be unfeeling from the get-go.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So you turn off the valve of your heart energy immediately, right?
Yep.
Grade school, whatever, toughen up, whatever. I remember I was in third grade playing football, tackle football, whatever. And we lost a game. It was third graders, like you barely figure out how to play the game.
Yep.
We lost a game. We're on the sidelines, and one of my friend's dads took a nickel out of his pocket and threw it on the ground. And he's like, "That's how much you guys are worth right now,"
Yeah.
right? So you just from a very young age, you're trained, how to behave,
Yeah.
And feeling your emotions is not one of those things. So we all learn to bypass that. So that's not the way that human beings are made to function. It's not the way the soul is made to function.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tough it out through your 20s probably, and your 30s, but by the time you hit 40, most men are in a soul crisis because they've just turned themselves off so much and they don't know how to turn themselves back on again.
Yeah.
They know something's wrong. They're not feeling good. They're not behaving properly. They kind of know that, but there's really no understanding of what's going on that's creating that.
That was me.
Yeah, yeah. And so that leads to what? Alcoholism, beating your wife, beating your kids, whatever.
Yeah, whatever craziness.
All the ills. Shooting up the Walmart, whatever.
Yeah.
All the craziness
Being
is
fucking
happening.
crazy.
Yeah, and this is this toxic masculinity that has really gotten traction,
Yep.
here in our culture, and it's needs to be addressed, and I think a lot about that as working with folks here, even myself, of how do you go from, it took me a decade to really open up my heart and to come back into my body and be oh, now I'm finally here. I had to work through a lot of stuff. And then what you realize is once you come back into your heart is there's this whole other information system that is related to I'm going to talk about your heart. I'm going to talk about your spiritual heart, right?
Yeah.
Your heart, in the middle of your chest. So we all have this energetic system, and a simplified version of that is just the 7 chakras, And I used to think that was kind of foofy new age craziness, or maybe metaphorical, whatever. But doing this work, I really learned that no, man, as you manifest, we're in this giant simulation, right? How do you manifest your soul energy into this, monkey robot? Well, it comes through these chakra points, these chakra systems. So whether it's you have 7 big ones, right? The root chakra is the base of your spine.
Yeah. Why don't you go through them real quick?
Yeah, I'll talk about it. So the root chakra is the base of your spine. Your second chakra is your sacral chakra. It's 2 inches below your belly button. Your third chakra is right around your solar plexus. Your fourth chakra is your heart. Fifth chakra is your throat. Your sixth chakra is your third eye, middle of your forehead, and your fourth chakra is the top of your head, your crown. And some might say there are other chakras that go up, but those are the main ones in the body, and they're kind of split. So the heart is in the center, and then your higher chakras really are pulling energy from above, and your lower chakras are the chakras that are helping you manifest into this reality. And they all are doing different things. So they're all, and again, this is my own kind of conception of what's happening. I should preface all this by saying that whenever you're talking about any kind of spiritual truth, I kind of forget who did this. I heard this from this guy, Adyashanti, the spiritual teacher, talked about, any spiritual truth is just the finger pointing at the spiritual truth, and not to confuse the finger pointing with the actual truth. Because the actual truth can't be spoken. We're stuck here in the simulation. We have words. We use them. We're humans. This is the way we understand stuff. But once you get out of this, you just realize that, that's a very limited thing, right? So everything I'm saying now, these are just ideas, not the capital T truth, but small t truth, or just ways of thinking about things, because we are human. We are in these bodies. We have these brains. So it's just ways of thinking about things to make it easier, kind of thought ideas or thought forms or thought models to help you understand what's going on. Because they've things have evolved to help me understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the chakra system. So, And it's really, if the system's not working properly, you're not flowing in these parts of your soul that you need to flow and to feel good, right? So you have your 7 chakra points, and each one of them is giving you some soul energy of a certain kind. So coming in, let's say through your root chakra, what's coming in there? The root chakra is really grounding you here into this 3D reality. And if you're feeling you have an open root chakra, it's working properly, you're feeling things like the universe is helping me, I'm supposed to be here, I have everything I need, I can survive, I have the support of my family. Like, it's basically survival. You feel like I can survive.
Yeah.
If that chakra is not working, damaged, whatever, blocked, you just never feel like you can survive. And I know when I started feeling anxious, I realized a lot of my anxiety back in the day was because my root chakra was closed, and no amount of money, no amount of, bunkers in your backyard are going to make you feel good, like you can survive if your root chakra is closed. So you can be the richest dude in the world with a closed root chakra. You're still going to feel like you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
You can be, homeless dude living on the train tracks with a, root chakra that's firing, and you're going to feel like the world's your oyster and the universe gives you everything you need.
Yeah. Blackberries grow right behind you.
Yeah. I got a half eaten cheeseburger here. Yeah. Perfect. So it's not, it's not really that much to do with your material conditions on the outside. It's everything to do with the energy you're flowing through your system.
Yeah.
2nd chakra, right? Life force energy, desire, right? Sometimes it's like the sexual chakra. It's sexual desire, but it's more broadly creativity, desire, life force energy, So if you're feeling like you have a little desire, of course, if you have a little sex drive, you're just not feeling like you have a lot of joie de vivre or whatever. Mm-hmm. 2nd chakra issues. 3rd chakra is around self-esteem and personal power. Negative self-talk, right? Low self-esteem, all of these things are symptomatic of just a 3rd chakra that's not working properly. And these can also be working, there's the weak part of this. They can also be working, though, in a toxic fashion, right? So if the 3rd chakra is still not working properly, but you're projecting through it, that can lead to like domination, kind of bad, being a bad boss.
False legend.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Just being a dick,
exactly.
Whatever. This kind of, projecting your power over your family or over, being a bully, right? That can come out of the 3rd chakra. So these are all the lower chakras attach you to this reality. Your heart is the center, right? This is why so much, information comes into the heart chakra, because it's linking, heaven to the earth. So your heart chakra, middle of your chest, and that's really flowing in high heart energy, the energy of universal love, not to be confused with kind of human romantic, monkey love.
Yeah.
They can feel the same, but it's just a different quality. It's the best feeling. And really, I think this kind of universal love flowing through the heart chakra is the basis for all good feeling.
Yeah.
If you don't have this flowing, you're just not going to feel good. And so when kind of going back to the earlier piece, which is if you're just walking around not feeling good, it's because your heart is closed. And you don't even know it. You'd be like, oh, no, I have emotions, or I get happy or sad. Like, yeah, but it's different. Emotions are different than having that heart chakra open and flowing in that high heart energy into your system. And you've experienced that, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So you go from like, not understanding what you're missing to all of a sudden that thing turns on, and it's like a furnace. And you're just like, I remember mine turned on. I was probably doing work. Yeah, I had little glimpses of it. It would kind of like, I think of it like a valve. Think of all these chakras like a valve, and you would just open the valve a little bit, be like, wow, that felt really good. What was that? That felt really good. And over time, you just get better at keeping that valve open and just flowing more of that high heart energy through your 4th chakra. So that's kind of, really the gas that's driving the whole system in terms of feeling good here. And then as you're going up, throat chakra, right? This is all about speaking your truth, how you're communicating, articulating. And it's not just the mechanisms of language, but it really is like, it's right above your heart chakra, So it's taking in information from your heart chakra, your other chakra points, and it's trying to articulate that to yourself or other people sometimes. You know how you go through sometimes in your head, spin, and you talk to somebody for 2 seconds and you just articulate something to them that you were still kind of confused about, right?
Yeah.
That to me is your throat chakra kicking in, and it's kind of informing you, hey, this is actually what you're doing, or this is how to solve this problem or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a really weird mechanism.
It is. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah, it's super cool, right?
It's really cool.
I remember I used to go to the whiteboard and just like whiteboard to myself, because getting it out that way, talking myself through this, you could kind of come to solve some problems. But anyway, moving up then to your 3rd eye, right? This is the right side of your forehead. So it's really about your mind. It's about seeing the unseen. All of your thoughts, of course, projections into the future, pathways for the future, all coming out of the third eye. Intuition, oftentimes. I mean, all the chakras are kind of giving intuitions of different types, right? Depending on what they are. But I think we most associate like kind of, brain intuition coming out of your third eye or your third eye. And finally, the crown, which hooks you up into kind of the universe, the oneness, and that's really the highest energy that's really connecting you then into the astral plane. So anyway, all these systems work together. So if your chakra system, energy system is not working properly, you just don't have these things. So if your heart is closed, you're not flowing in that high heart energy, that love. It's really hard to feel good. I mean, you can have, you can like spike your serotonin, spike your dopamine, and feel good for a little bit. And this is, I think, what a lot of the anti-anxiety and antidepressants are doing. They're kind of using biochemical tricks to make you feel better. But if that heart's not open, you're never going to solve the problem.
Right.
Likewise, if your root is closed, you're never going to feel, like you can survive. All the above. So for me, I know that when I'm feeling anxious, my root chakra is something's wrong. It's blocked, it's closed, whatever. And if I'm feeling depressed, I can trace it right back to my heart and say, oh, my heart that valve is closed, And I would say for a long time, I think of it like, it's like a spring valve, and it would spring closed. So I would have to open it up and kind of keep it open, and it would shut. I'd keep it open a little longer, it would shut, And it's really like a lifetime of practice to keep that thing open so it just stays open and you're flowing this energy through your system. So I think some of the great sages of the world, Christ, Buddha, all the big guys, they were flowing in all their energy. They were completely embodied. They were flowing in, enough soul energy where they could basically change the vibration of the planet.
Yeah. They call it Christ energy, right?
Christ energy. And most people I work on now are walking around, I was the same way, with like between 10 and 20% of your soul energy coming through into the system.
Yeah.
So you're kind of moping around, doing crazy things, and you're wondering why. Well, it's because the monkey's kind of running the show, and the monkey's doing what it's programmed to do, and it's programmed through, DNA and millions of years of evolution. It's programmed to survive in the way it knows how, right? As you begin to open up your chakra system, flow more of your soul energy, kind of clear out some of that past trauma or trauma and past karma, your soul begins to start to work the levers of your life. And that's why things look a lot different. And so when that happened for me, what happened? Well, I went from being, the startup Silicon Valley corporate guy to all of a sudden now I'm doing, shaman work, soul work, basically. And this is something my soul wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, my ego still wants to be a Silicon Valley entrepreneur,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what the ego wants.
Absolutely.
But the soul is like, no, this is your path to do. And that became very clear. I mean, I fought it for a long, long time, because the ego again. And I think the masculine, getting kind of back to this toxic masculinity, the masculine ego can be very, very firm, very rigid, right?
Yeah.
And you think about why that is. And oftentimes I work with women as well. And, women, their ego is not quite as firm or fixed, right? Particularly if they're mothers, they're a little bit more permeable. I think you have to be, right? To be able to take in the needs and account of others.
The nurture.
Yeah, the nurturing part, yeah.
Yep.
So if you're not wired that way, and we use kind of masculine, feminine, men and women, and there is certainly a biological difference, right? But there's also temperamental differences too. And so, you can be a more masculine-oriented female, just as you can be a more kind of feminine-oriented male.
Yeah, we share that energy within us.
Whatever it is, the yin and yang, right? That's kind of another way to put it, right? Mm-hmm. Yin energy being more nurturing, yang energy being more, it's like the actual act itself, right? Like yang is more penetrative, and yin is more receptive, and that's the way, that's the way it works, right?
Yeah.
So this yang energy, and that's super useful, right, for doing masculine stuff, protecting the tribe, right? Doing the hard stuff, like chasing the mastodon, riding the saber-toothed tiger, whatever you're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
And when I think about that, I think a lot about, the ability for the masculine to compartmentalize. And this is something that, I haven't heard a lot of people talking about. And to be honest, I haven't done a ton of the research into the science part of it, but I do kind of, understand that the female brain, the male brain, they have different levels of connectivity within the actual brain itself. And I've heard other studies saying that's not true. I don't know, but certainly it's true. You can see it in practice, which is men can get very compartmentalized.
Yeah.
Like, you're a welder. You're like, I'm welding this thing. I'm just right here welding this thing. I'm not doing my taxes. I'm not thinking about the kids. I'm not thinking about the wife. I'm not thinking about, sometimes you daydream, but really you're just like, I'm here doing this thing.
Yeah.
And you can sit there and do that thing for a long time. And then when you're not doing that thing, you got to kind of come up and you got to change context and do something else, whatever. Well, this allows you to be very compartmentalized, but there's this kind of pathological compartmentalization that I think is toxic masculinity, in that, you get drilled in so much, you don't know how to come back out of that.
Yeah.
You're just, I'm compartmentalized. And this is, I think, when I think about, vets coming home, they're really compartmentalized so much they can't open their hearts back up.
I see that.
They're just stuck, and they know something's wrong. And, I think there's good intentions for the medical community to try to assist, but they don't realize it's not a brain disease, neurochemical, whatever. It's a soul sickness.
Yep.
It's a soul sickness.
Well, what do you think about, this is my thought. When you take an 18-year-old kid who has really no idea what's going on in the world or who he is or anything, and you strip him down and you build him up as a fucking war machine.
Yeah.
And you send him overseas and have him go kill bad guys, quotes.
Yeah.
For however long, and then you bring him back and you put him into society and you tell him to have a normal job. What do you, I guess to me it's like, of course his soul's fucked up.
Yeah.
Well,
and I lived enough of that to recognize it, right? So I remember I was deployed to Panama on some training. There's a jungle warfare center down there when I was in the service, and we were down there for a while doing reconnaissance, scout training, whatever, fun stuff. And I just remember going to Panama, and like you drive around, and again, this would have been like early 90s, mid 90s, whatever, early 90s. And the place was kind of a disaster, like favelas and just miles of kind of shanty towns and poor people. And I'm like, wait a minute, we attacked this place? Like and we were patting ourselves on the back for like talk about punching down. It's like the 49ers playing my elementary school football team. I'm like,
dead horse.
Yeah, I'm like, what? And how did I feel so good about this? As it like, I remember it was high school or something when that Panama thing went down. I forget exactly, but I was like, yeah, we got them. We got Noriega. And like, I'm looking now, I'm like, we should have been bombing them with money, Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What am I doing?
Yeah.
And then once you kind of begin to, so like I said, you're 18, you get programmed. By the time you hit about 24, 25, you start to being like, well, maybe this is not really the way I want to spend my time.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly if you do any research into, once you get more mature, checking out like foreign policy and why we're doing this stuff and how all of it's just kind of nonsense.
Yep.
We all get trapped in like the good old days of World War II, where there was certainly a reasonable cause to go to war and all the other stuff. But since then, I can't track a single one of the wars that we've fought that makes any sense.
No.
And then you're sitting there. The thing that I did not want to do at some point, I'm like, look, I don't want to be in a position where I'm killing poor brown people for no reason.
Yeah.
That anybody can articulate to me, or the reason they do articulate to me is completely obviously wrong.
Yeah. And that's where moral and obey come into play, right?
Totally.
When just because the top down ranks or your chief in command says, hey, you're going to do this, when your heart says otherwise,
that's that compartmentalization.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm here, I'm doing the job, take the orders, I'll do the thing, I'll compartmentalize. That is going to bite you in the ass.
That loses a piece of your soul, I think.
Yeah, a piece of you breaks off. And you can't unwind that without doing soul work. And so you come back, and I know that in the vet community, we're seeing a lot of folks interested in plant medicines, right? Because they're seeing relief. They're getting soul relief.
Yeah.
And they're getting off all the other meds they're on, and they're able to do that because they're bringing back their soul. It's really like a soul retrieval type of activity.
I'm going to take a break really quick.
Yeah, sure.
Because I think that I need to delete a podcast or we're going to run out of space.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay, we're back.
And we're back.
We're back. Okay, so we're talking about compartmentalization, coming back from war, all this different shit.
Yeah, so how do you unwind that, right? So, and again, you think about like, so the masculine is wired a certain way, right? You have this ability to focus and compartmentalize, which is important for all the we evolved this way for a reason. And those traits are still important, although as society modernizes, things get automated. Like it's a little bit different now, but the tendencies are still important. So the question is, how do you if you have to compartmentalize, and I would say back in the day when you were doing this and you were fighting wars and such, oftentimes it was to protect the tribe. It was for a reason. You're getting attacked, whatever.
Yep.
Even if it wasn't a good reason, like we're going to attack them and take their, women and cows or whatever.
Yeah.
It was still like a reason, as opposed to now you're like, why are we bombing these people? They're like, well, WMD.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they aren't near there. Now why are we here?
Yeah.
Regime change, we think, or we're just here and the machine is working and it's chewing stuff up. And like, well, what's the end game?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Take it over.
Yeah. Like, well, are we going to take the oil? No. We're not here for the oil. I'm like, at least then you could be like, well, okay, we're stealing oil, but it's something, as opposed to like, what
is the reason?
Yeah.
Right.
And if you look at all of these, when I was in the academy in West Point and other studies of insurgent warfare and counterinsurgency, you just realize popular insurgencies are impossible to win, basically. And everything we you think about the Taliban, look at Afghanistan. Like, it was a popular insurgency. Like, we're not going to win.
You can't beat an idea. You can't bomb an idea out of existence.
Yeah, it doesn't make, like I said, even somebody back in the Vietnam War was like, you could have given every one of the Vietnamese $1 million or whatever the number was, $100,000, for what that cost us. And that's the way to win friends to influence people, So instead of spending the money we should just, drop pallets of money at these places.
That's one of the things that Mother Aya taught me was that I was, like I said before, very angry, but not knowing.
Yeah.
And not knowing. I didn't think I was angry.
Yeah.
Or I didn't know that I wasn't full of love. I thought I was.
Yeah.
And all these different things. And my solution was, because my whatever behavior or personality type is do jujitsu, I fight.
Yeah.
I'm a warrior.
Yeah.
So mine is just that. Let's just go fuck people up.
Yeah.
That's how we're going to solve every problem. We'll just fucking kill them. Well, one of the things that I had learned kind of was that let's say I did do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I kill off every single person on planet Earth, and then it's just me.
Exactly.
And now you're gonna have a whole nother fucking problem. So that's not the way.
Yeah.
And that once I realized that my heart was not open, and that it did get opened, I don't think that I can ever remember a time where I actually felt that good, and not for a reason.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't pinpoint it. It was all of a sudden like, I don't know, life's all of a sudden beautiful. And for some reason I love people and I love plants and nature.
Yeah.
And before it's like, I didn't give a fuck about any of that.
Yeah. No, it's a night and day shift. I get it, man. Like that's exactly the way that I was. I was just kind of like a machine going through life, with my certain goals. And I just didn't have any empathy. Mm-hmm. Like, I could kind of make it up. The brain could kind of manufacture how to behave. You should behave properly. So whatever. So, you could kind of construct that for yourself. But one of the very first things that I was shown on my journeys was that they're like, dude, you don't really feel any emotions. You're thinking all of your emotions. You're thinking all of your feelings.
Yeah. And
that's not really the way you're supposed to operate. So once I began to feel stuff, I was just like, oof, it was just the system. My system was not, it was too clogged up, So it took quite a while to get through that process of just stripping down all of these energetic blockages, and that's people are like, oh, what does that even mean? It's just words used to describe like your system. Your energetic system is not working properly. Something's wrong with it, and you need some assistance in fixing that.
So do you think that our body holds on to trauma and tragedy in a not just a physical form? For instance, let's take a sexually abused woman, right?
Yeah.
She was abused in a physical form.
Yeah.
But say it's been 10 years, whatever problems physically are all healed up and better.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that mean that she's all better, or is there imprinted energetic scars within there?
Sure. Totally. Yeah,
that you can't see.
Yeah.
It's not a physical thing, but there's clearly a fucking
Yeah. Well, a couple, work from a guy named Gabor Mate on trauma. Mm-hmm. A book by, I forget who wrote it. It's called Body Keeps Score. About that, of like your energetic system keeps this information, and your body, like the energetics are kind of at the top and everything else is downstream. So your physical manifestation is downstream from the energetics, so it all comes from the energy, let's say. So again, these, for simple model, these 7 chakra points are flowing in the soul energy from the ethereal realms, wherever the other side is, into your, physical system, and it's being created kind of on an ongoing basis from the other side. So if you can change the energetics, that will change everything down in the physical, right? Because it's upstream of it. But there's a bidirectional flow, right? So you can change, you can manipulate the physical, and also you can change the energetics. That seems to be a feature of the whole system. So I know a lot of the work I do now is working on people physically, and if you're just touching into places, and you're like, I don't know why it seems like you have a big chunk of something energetic here, and if I just like really work on this spot, you're gonna have you're gonna purge, you're gonna poop, you're gonna sweat, you're gonna cry, like some release is gonna happen through you, and you didn't even know, you might not even know what it is. Sometimes you get information like you say, oh, that, that was from a past life accident, or that was from this life, or when I got kicked in the face when I was a kid, whatever. Like sometimes you get that. Sometimes it just energy just goes out of your system, and it's a mystery how that works. It's very alchemical, but you just feel better. You're like, okay, I just feel better now.
So the last time that we had our ceremony, or last time I had ceremony with you, you had moved something for that was deep in me that I had no idea was there.
Yeah.
And I remember we were talking before that night, and I had said, like, for some reason, I don't ever purge the typical way, right? I mean, I shake and I sweat and I cry and I have all these other ways, but I haven't, like, I want to look in the bucket.
Yeah. What's
going on in the bucket? And you had started working on me.
Be careful what you ask for, right?
Yeah. and I remember when you had asked me, do I want some energy work? And I said, yeah. And I didn't, I just thought it was going to be energy work. But then you built something. Something was being built in me. I'll never forget. It was right here in my solar plexus. Yeah. And it got big enough to where I remember thinking, like, dude, I'm going to fucking puke this thing up. I'm going to do it. I'm going to grab my bucket and I'm going to get it out.
Here it comes.
And I remember, and I got it out. And ever since that day, I swear I feel physically lighter.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. So what's happening? So your third chakra, right? This is all around this kind of, personal power, right? Whether it's good personal power in the form of self-esteem or it's negative in terms of bullying, whatever, like it was all clogged up, So clearing that out, and then whatever the magic of the medicine, whatever the alchemical, I mean, it's amazing. You end up purging, and there's this idea that, oh, you're just purging the medicine itself. It's noxious to your system perhaps, and it's like a biochemical thing or whatever. That's not what's happening. What's happening, it's energetic. It's an energetic release in the form of a vomit purge, Oftentimes you don't even vomit out anything.
And that was it. I didn't. Yeah, nothing even came out.
You're just retching up energy.
Yeah, not even like bile or spit.
Yeah,
just
nothing. Yeah.
Air.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you've done prep for ceremony properly, you don't have anything in your stomach anyway. You have a little bit of medicine, right?
Yeah.
And that's not enough to nothing comes up.
Nope.
So you're like, what is that all about?
But it was as if, and felt as if it was just a total Ralph, man.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the Ralph of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's hard to describe until you've gone through it, but you're just, once you've had it, you're like, and then you feel like, 100 pounds lighter. You're like, I just lost such heaviness. Inexplicable. It's a mystery. And every time I do it, the mind, and again, the soul is upstream of the mind, right? So, your soul is, you are not your mind, you're not your body, you're not your emotions, right? You're the soul, and you're in here, and all of those are tools at your disposal, right? Particularly the mind, it could be a great tool, but the mind doesn't have the information that the soul does. Mm-hmm. So once you come back, and we just did ceremony this weekend, so we were there in the field last night, so I'm still feeling the effects a little bit now, which is probably why I agreed to do this.
Yeah, perfect.
No, I'm just kidding. the mind is struggles to explain what happened. Like the mind's like, what was going on? That is the craziest, strangest experience. And I've learned just to kind of relax and just let the mind do its little, it's like a hobby. Noodling over this stuff is like with mind and thought forms is like my hobby. But again, it's just all finger pointing, it's don't confuse it with the actual truth. This is just your finger pointing at the truth. So what's happening? Are we really retching up energy? I don't know. That's certainly not what's happening on the energetic side, but it seems to explain what's happening, on the human 3D side. That's what's going on. Or you're shaking, or you're sweating, or you're crying. These are all methods of release.
Yeah.
And you ask yourself, why would that work that way? Why would you design the system looks like that? I don't know, but it works.
It does work.
It's efficacious. There's, and that's why I love doing this work, because there's no really way to get educated about this but to do the work yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, someone who hasn't done it, no matter how well you can explain to them, you just don't know what you don't know.
Well, it is, right? It is the ultimate red pill, right? So the Matrix, right? Red pill, blue pill. Red pill takes you out of the Matrix, and the blue pill keeps you in it. Well, I think psychedelics really are the red pill.
I think
and once you've had that experience, no matter what it is, right? Could be psilocybin, could be ayahuasca, could be ibogaine, could be any all the cactus family, the peyotes, the San Pedro, whatever. They all have different experiences, but once you have that shift in perspective, and you are able to get below the level of personality and below the level of your ego into the soul, there's really no going back, right? Even if you only do it once, you're forever changed. And I think in our culture, in our society now, we're yearning for some spirituality. I think this is a whole other topic, but I think like the pre-modern religions have just kind of run their course, and they just don't make any sense anymore. I mean, think about it. Most of these religious mythologies were the big ones, the Abrahamic ones, right? Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Like, they're pre-modern. I mean, they're from illiterate societies.
Yeah.
If you do any research back in like Palestine in the, when Christ was walking around, it was like 90% illiteracy. Like, nobody could read or write. They were just eking out a living, if you've been back to the Middle East, it's a rough go, Yeah. And so you take, pre-modern, whatever kind of Iron Age Bedouin, Middle East kind of tribal Bedouin-ish kind of religions, and you thrust them into the present time, and they just don't make any sense. And we've done about as many cartwheels as we can to try to make them make sense. But I think ultimately they're just really hard to take seriously now. Yeah. Because they just don't answer any of the, many of the problems of modern society.
Yeah. I mean, here, eat these mushrooms or take this cactus or drink this tea, and then let's talk tomorrow. I got some questions for you. Right?
Right. And you think, what's the difference? Well, most religion is what I would call, it's delivered. It's delivered to you in the form of a book or a sermon. I'm going to tell you how it is, and you got to believe, right? This is how it is. Believe this. Well, it's oftentimes you're like, that doesn't make any sense, but typically you're a kid when you're indoctrinated. So you just take it like, okay, that's the way it is, Well, this spirituality is different because it's experiential, and as long as you're believing something on faith, it's always in question.
Yeah.
You got to continue. This is why you go to church every Sunday to get sold something new, because you got to get resold the same thing, because it's hard to maintain that belief / faith. Well, experiential, you can't take that away.
Yeah.
Particularly these experiences, because they again seem so much more real than this life we're in right now. That you're just like, that definitely is real.
Yeah.
No matter what else is going on in my life, I know that happened.
Yep.
And you can't take that away.
And nor do I give a shit what anyone tries to tell me, whether they believe me.
Yeah, you're just
or
like,
not. It's
whatever.
Like, look, you can believe whatever you want, but I know what happened.
To your point, like, great.
Yeah.
Take these mushrooms and we'll talk in the morning. Let me know how it goes for you.
Yeah.
And if you have a great experience or horrible experience, you've had an experience.
You had an experience.
And you're like, that was different than anything else I've ever done or felt or had.
Yep.
So it becomes quite real.
So with that being said, okay, so we can take this tea or do these different things, and we can essentially visit the astro world.
Yeah.
Or ether or whatever.
Yeah.
What do we call it? What do you call it?
I call it either just the other side or the astral plane, or
So there's many times where people have listened to podcasts and heard about dark entities or bad juju or light beings.
Yeah.
Why don't you discuss a little bit about that?
Yeah.
If there is that, like, what do we do about that?
That's an interesting topic.
Okay.
It's kind of ongoing. My understanding of that is ongoing, but I think a lot of it, like, even in your daily life, there are a lot of agendas going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even with you and your work colleagues, maybe your family, like, you're kind of in alignment, but also there's a lot of opposing agendas sometimes,
Yep.
Boss wants you to work more, you want to work less, he wants to pay you less, you want to make more, these are, his boss's boss wants to whatever, make more profit, all these things, right? So they're opposing agendas. Well, I think in this system we're in right now, I think there are just a number of agendas. Like, this is an enormous game, multiplayer game that we're in, for lack of a better. Again, this is just an idea, right? But we're in this enormous thing, and I think there's just a lot of agendas going on at many, many different levels. So, the easiest to understand are just the human issues. So you're talking about dark energy, whatnot. Like, a lot of this is just greed and avarice, old school style, right? It's not hard to figure out. And again, oftentimes this is an issue with the chakra system, or soul's not present. I think with, like, serial killers and any kind of sociopath or whatever, they're just not enough soul is present to give them an idea of how they should behave, or to give them any empathy or any kind of heart energy. So they're just roaming around. What were we just talking about?
I was talking about, like, the dark entities.
Oh yeah. So there's that kind of thing going on, and then once you get out there certainly does seem like there are other entities that are volitional. They have some agenda. Are they like demon? No, I think they just have a different agenda. And I think about this like, you're walking down the sidewalk and you step on like 100 ants that are in like a line. You don't even know you stepped on the ants. You're going to church. You step on a bunch of ants. Well, the ants are like, that guy's the devil. He just murdered 100 of us. He didn't even know and you're just a guy walking down the street. You don't even pay attention. So, are you evil, or are you, the ants think you're the devil, but, you think you're whatever. You're on your way to, do something good.
There was no ill intention.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that's going on in these bigger systems, because, and we tend to kind of anthropomorphize us because we are human, and we say the other side is like this, only different. I think things like emotions, like mammalian emotion, like this whole, like, we're animals, we are mammals, and we have emotions, right? And these things that we evolved because they're great survival mechanisms. Well, I don't see that on the other side. I see, like, what you might call love, or this feeling, this kind of like multidimensional good feeling, whether that's consciousness, it could be consciousness as well. I don't know. But it's not like here at all, and the more you try to make it like here, the weirder it becomes, right? So it's hard to describe, even that idea of good and ill, requires some kind of, like, it's a human perspective almost, right?
Yeah.
I think sometimes things just are. It just is the way that it is. And I think if you're not worried about survival as a human, these things, you don't really care that much. I mean, in my traipsing around the astral, I just realized that many times, like, whatever my human concerns were just not concerns outside of this game, like, whatever, you're playing a video game,
Yeah.
like, whatever the physics are of the video game, whatever the action, you're playing with other people, like, it means a lot when the game's on, but once the game's off, you don't really care what happens, right?
Right.
I think some of that happens here as well. It's like, we care a lot here because we're playing the game, but once you exit, you die. I don't think you turn back. I don't think you really, you're just like, game's over.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing this other thing.
Off to the next.
Yeah, off to the next, or doing whatever you're doing. And
Yeah.
because we're here in the simulation, you can't understand a simulation from being within it.
Right.
So here we are, we're in this thing, and what happens next? I know enough to know it's out there, and through this work, you get out there and you can, navigate out there and you're doing something, but to come back as a human, you get all that information gets stripped away because, you're human and we're in time and space and, we have brains and they're very limited. And so whatever, you can be in these astral, these very high states when you think you just know everything, and you do. You're like, oh, I get what's happening. And then as you come back, and this happened to me a bunch of being way out there as a point of awareness in the field someplace. And then as you come back to become a human, you just first you realize, oh, there's time. Then you realize, oh, I'm a human, oh, that's weird. Oh, my name's Kevin. Oh, I have a personality. Oh, I'm sitting here on this mat, in this maloka or in this room. And oh, I've taken this substance and I'm having this ceremony. You reassemble all of the components of your ego and your personality. But you realize they are just an assemble. It's like you're reading the coding is rendering you in real time. And then you're like, wow, this is not real. This is a line of code someplace, here I am in this thing. But all the other dimensions that I had access to, I don't look I've asked, and you can take back a little bit, just enough to know it was there sometimes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you get information that's useful here very directly. But so the times I've been way out there, I'm always struck by just how interesting and special being a human is. And I never am so happy to be human as when I come back. Then I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. I know how this works, and life is full of challenges, but you begin to look at your challenges a lot different too, right? And that's another one of the main benefits of feeling good is if you're feeling good from the inside, your material conditions, it can be good, bad, whatever, and you may feel sad or happy or whatever, but there's a kind of a baseline of I feel okay.
Yeah, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, that just can't be rocked, really. And you just recognize all of this as the universe bringing these experiences to you for you to evolve your consciousness. And if you can look at these things and say, what am I being taught here? What am I being taught? Maybe I need to go a different direction. Maybe I need to break off this relationship. Maybe I need to improve my, be more empathetic, open my heart. Maybe I got to do whatever, and all these things the universe throws at you to help you on your path. And I really do believe that now. Before I was kind of like, that sounds like bullshit, blah, 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 blah. But after doing this work, I'm like, no, the universe is conspiring to help you evolve, to do what you came here to do, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And if you would, if you can drop into that soul energy and you can feel the guidance of the soul, it's going to lead you straight every time. Even if the ego is fighting it all the time, because the ego, again, is programmed differently. It's conditioned from your birth and your education and your family structure and your society and everything, right? So that conditioning exists. Somehow you have to be able to get below that to the level of the soul and then have the soul be really what's guiding, right? The soul guiding the brain, the soul that's guiding your behavior. And that, I think, in my own practice is what I try to do all the time. I would just be like, look, is this my ego, going, and the ego is useful. It keeps you alive, right? It does stuff, right? The brain is, thinking is an important function. You got a supercomputer sitting on your shoulders, right? Use it properly as a tool to do your taxes, fix your car, build a house, whatever.
Right.
But when the brain is trying to figure out, what your soul mission should be, it doesn't have access to that information. Go to the soul, go directly to the source, and the soul will then be able to. The brain needs to be in service of the soul.
I agree.
It's hard to get to though because we're so wired in here.
And I think also people are just so out of touch with themselves.
Yeah.
That. I mean, I can see people listening to this and being like, what the fuck is the difference between a soul and you and your brain?
Yeah,
you know? It's all the same thing. And it's like, no, it's not.
Well, again, this is somewhat like the finger pointing. Yeah.
Not to me, I should say.
I'd say it's capital T truth. No, this is probably not what's going on, but it's super useful to view the world that way of more of my soul energy needs to come in and I will feel better. And you begin to operate not so much from the whims of the outside world because, you don't control anything outside of you. And we live in a very uncertain world. I mean, you can get hit by a car, whatever. Any number of bad things can happen to you. Stock market can crash, whatever. There's constant stuff happening, right? You see it all the time. So that tends to make you can make you very anxious and very worried and very nervous all the time. But if you can reclock yourself, right? And this is spiritual practice from not being so focused out there, not generating your happiness from outside of yourself, new house, new car, new relationship, whatever, but begin to generate that sense of contentment and well-being and happiness from within. It just changes your entire perspective. And that really is the spiritual path. And at some point, you go down this, and I would say this medicine path is a spiritual path for sure. And the church I work with, we're dedicated to helping folks wake up. And what does that even mean? You hear it, people, trying to wake up, blah, blah, blah. What does that even mean? Well, in this case, it means that you wake up to the fact that you're a soul and you're having this human experience, and this is just one of the many, I've been shown a bunch of different past lives and future lives, and you just realize you're playing this game for a long time. You're in, you're out, and, if you're so tied, and like the Buddhists would say, kind of your cravings and aversions, if you're just trying to run towards your cravings or run away from your aversions, you're just never going to be really happy.
Yeah.
But if you can recognize that outside world is, you don't control, and it's not going to be the foundation of your true well-being. That all comes from the inside. At some point, you begin to have a perspective from the inside out. And that's when that's when enough of the soul is present that you can actually begin to operate that way.
How do you think how do you get to the point where you're trying to operate from the inside, finding love from the inside?
Some of it is just where you are in your evolutionary, like the evolution of your consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of lives you have, you're just maybe a newer soul and you're in, or you're not that experienced with being human or something. I don't know. And you're just not really working on that thing.
Yeah.
And then at some point in your evolution, when your soul's like, okay, it's time for the soul to wake up while you're embodied to do something, then you begin the process and you find your path, whether it's plant medicine or whether it's meditation or whether it's breath work or whether it's whatever. There's a bunch of ways of getting there, I think. And if you're, I think a lot about the role of intention, intention and attention. And if your intention is to wake up, or if your intention is to reclock yourself from the inside out, and you begin to give that attention, things are going to start to flow your way,
Yeah.
And it seems like it's never super straightforward. Sometimes it is, right? Sometimes universe gives you like a Scooby snack and it's like, oh, I want this thing, and this thing shows up. You're like, oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to work for it, but if you, again, have an intention, which is why intention setting is so important, and then give that intention attention, things will begin to manifest that lead you on the right path.
I think a lot of people don't even understand intentions.
Yeah, right. Right.
I don't think that they grasp the energy that comes with intentions and what actually manifests when you're not paying attention to your intentions.
Right. Because you're not paying attention. Mm-hmm. And it's also it's a little confusing too, because the mind could have intentions, and not to confuse the egoic intentions with the soul's intentions, right? And it's good to step back and say that your experience here as a human is to assist your soul in evolving. It's not here to make your ego happy.
Right.
And the ego wants what the ego wants: comfort, status, money in the bank.
Yeah. Women.
Yeah. All the above, right?
Yeah.
Right? This is what the ego wants.
Yep.
The soul
doesn't give a shit.
Does not like, this is not what we're here for. And time again, folks come into ceremony. We always go through what are your intentions for having the ceremony? And so oftentimes it's just monkey concerns. Should I stay with my girlfriend or leave her? Should I take this job or this job? Should I buy a red car or the blue car? Should I, And then, hour into ceremony, it's like blown out of the water, and none of that stuff. Then it all seems so stupid. You're like, who cares about all this stuff? Because then the soul is like, no. This is what we're working on. We're working on your heart opening up, you flowing in more universal love, you getting your energetic system in place, you being a happier functioning human, and then you doing, your soul's mission while you're here, which is going to be in the service of the greater whole.
Yeah.
Right? How are you serving? Like time and time again, when you come back and people evolve their consciousness, right? Where do they end up? They end up in service somehow. This is how I ended up here. Like, I never intended on doing this stuff. This was if you'd have told me, whatever, 10 years ago, hey, you're going to be doing this work, you know, in a decade, this is how your life will be. I would have been like, what went wrong?
Yeah.
What went wrong in my life that this is where I ended up, you know? And now I see it as like the biggest blessing. Yeah. So I've never felt so good.
And look at what you're doing. I mean,
yeah,
you're helping thousands of people.
It's amazing.
I mean, you helped me to the point where I'm like, well, I want a podcast with you. I talk to people about it. I'm emailing and I'm like, dude, something happened because I drank this medicine and I called you the tour guide earlier.
Yeah.
I'm going on a journey, right?
Yeah.
And I don't, I'm not comfortable with this journey. I have no fucking clue where I'm going or what. Yeah. So I have a shaman or a ayahuasca, as sometimes it's called.
Yeah. Depending on kind of the culture and whatnot. And but again, it's changing a little bit because, you know, this, and I don't see, like the word shaman is kind of not loaded. It's just a cultural. I mean, it originally came out of the, you know, people up the Siberian, the like the Sami people, whatever. You know, they would drink, like the reindeer would eat particular hallucinogenic mushroom, and the shamans would drink the urine. Like, it would process it through the reindeer, and they would drink it, and they would, you know, have visions, whatever. And that's kind of where it came from, I believe. But I see it more like a facilitator almost, you know, because it's also not coming from me. Like little Kevin doesn't know. He's always like, what the fuck is going on?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just confused with everybody else. But Big K, you know, who's really interfacing with the bigger truth, always, you know, knows what's happening in ceremony. And I'm amazed working on you. Like, you know, it's not as if I'm using my deductive or inductive, you know, logic to be like, oh, you know, Tyler's got a giant energy knot of trauma in his third chakra, and I'm going to like pull and tug and press and like, you know, try to scrape it out of him. That doesn't make any sense to the mind.
Yeah.
You know? And yet it worked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I went right there. I was like, oh, I can see the problem, get into it, you know, do some whatever manipulation of the body, and here it comes, you know, boom, there goes the purge. So it's a mysterious process, but you know, so being able to call in more of your soul energy, right, and rely upon that. And that's what I think, you know, doing this work is largely about, just setting aside the personality and the ego, dropping into the soul energy and recognizing that, you know, the spirit of the plant medicine is really what's doing the healing. And, you know, I think in that regard, she has created some kind of a wormhole or a back door into the matrix, and is really a dedicated healer.
Yeah.
You know, and this is, you know, why it really is a healing. You know, during ceremony, they say there's, you know, 3 places you go. You go to the church, or you go to the church or the temple, you know, to basically have a spiritual experience. You go to the hospital to get healed, you know, or you go to the classroom to get information.
Mm-hmm.
And during a typical journey, you know, evening, let's say journeys last, you know, 4 to 6 hours, you're going to go to all 3 of those places.
Yeah.
You know, and you've been to all 3 of those places, and you get, when you're in the temple and it's reverence, and it's about the most amazing, ecstatic, you know, spiritual experiences, feelings you can't even describe.
Yeah.
When you're in the classroom, you're getting downloads about very practical things.
Yeah.
You know, like of course I do facilitation, but I also do my own work in this space. And I did a recent journey, and I just got very clear very practical instructions about a few things in my life. You're just like, oh, okay, great. Very helpful.
Yeah, roger that.
Yeah, roger that. And then sometimes you're, you know, in the hospital when you're getting a guy like me who's like ripping stuff out of your, you know, energetic stuff, and you're getting healed.
Yeah.
So those 3 things can happen. And, you know, and I've noticed in my arc of the work that a lot of it early on was just about getting cleaned out and getting healed, and just like removing all these blockages. Again, like the ones from this life, you can kind of understand, like, whatever, your dad beat you as a kid, you know, so you're, you know, whatever, you're a little flinchy or something, like, okay, that makes sense. But things that happen when you're so young, you can't even remember, or things that happen in past life, like, you just have no conscious recollection of these things. So it's really hard to understand, you know, whatever, why do you hate water and afraid of drowning, you know? Well, maybe you drowned last life.
Yeah.
But you don't have any access to that.
You have no idea.
Yeah. Through this work, all of a sudden these things become uncovered. You're like, oh, that's, you know, interesting. You know, that's an interesting reason why this particular facet of me operates this way. And once that gets healed, oftentimes it's, you know, that particular thing doesn't manifest for you.